Alright, yo, what's up, guys? This is Davemon here. I'm here to do the new and improved Pyke guide for Season 12. This is going to be fully updated from the last guide, which I did back in Season 10. And now this is going to be the new and improved, the updated everything. I'm trying to also go more in depth in a lot of areas that I didn't cover in the last guide. So, to jump right into it, we're going to start with the rune page. So Pyke's main choice for runes is always going to be the domination tree. And for the domination tree, your primary rune is going to be Halo Blades. This is just overall better in so many situations. Halo Blades will just improve you as a Pyke player, and it's just the most valuable rune. I think all these runes have like some sort of viability, but when it compares to Halo Blades, they're not even close. Not even close. So we're going to move on from that. The next tree is going to be one that a lot of people like to argue about. I think the difference between these runes is so minuscule that it really doesn't matter. I think you can take all three of these. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking any of these, but my choice is Cheap Shot. And the reason for Cheap Shot is because it combos with your Q and with your E in your lane phase trades. So an example is if you Q auto someone in lane, it's going to proc Cheap Shot. If you E auto someone, it's going to proc Cheap Shot. And all of your trades are based around landing your Q and landing your E. So the reason for Cheap Shot is because it's just a really nice, it's a low amount of true damage, but it stacks up throughout a lane phase, right? So every time you Q auto, you will be proccing this rune. And that's why I take it, is the lane phase trades are just really nice. Now for the next tree, you can go Eyeball or Zombie. My choice is always Eyeball, just because I tend to get kills early game. Now you can go Zombie. Zombie's completely fine, because you end up going Sweeper a lot as Pyke mid, but my choice is Eyeball. I just like it a lot. And for the Hunter runes, Ultimate Hunter, 99% of games. I actually did a lot of playtesting on the Treasure Hunter rune. My conclusion is that it's just not as good as Ultimate. I think you could run Relentless. Relentless is also a decent choice, but compared to Ultimate Hunter, I think Ultimate Hunter just wins by a landslide. And so that's it for the primary runes. For secondary, there's going to be two pages. It's either going to be this Resolve page, where you go Second Wind Unflinching, or it's going to be this Precision page, which is Triumph Tenacity. Now the difference between these two is the snowball capabilities. Okay, so the one that snowballs the hardest is going to be the Precision page with Triumph Tenacity. The reason for this is because when you start, fighting 2v2, 3v3, even 5v5, this Triumph will be saving you in a lot of fights. Okay, and so it's the best snowball page, but you can also go the second one, Revitalized page, or not Revitalized, Unflinching, which I do in 90% of my games. And what this does is just allows you to get through lane phase. It allows a lot of your trades to be a lot better. You can take losing trades and still come out a little bit on top. Second Wind is just so valuable for a lot of matchups when it comes to playing Pyke mid. You get a lot of utility out of this rune. If you use it correctly, though, that is the big thing, is using Second Wind correctly. And a lot of Pyke players just really don't understand how. And I am here to explain that. So let's jump into practice tool. That's it for the rune talk. I'm going to add a bot as well, probably like a Caitlyn, because I'm trying to take damage. I want to show you guys how I play just a lane phase in general, and how I use D-Shield Second Wind. So just so you guys know, you are never wrong in taking this page. You can run this page 100% of your games, it doesn't matter. It's a great page, you're never wrong in taking this. You can take the Precision page when you are very confident as a Pyke player, and you're confident in your ability to snowball and limit test and push your limits. Because when you have Triumph, that's when you can really exceed your limits as a player. But Second Wind, Unflinching, always a good choice, always. So if I take Second Wind, I go D-Shield every game. I do not go Longsword with Second Wind, but you can if you want. It's just D-Shield is a very valuable, very, very valuable item. And I'm going to try and show you why. So what I'm going to do, first off, is take some damage from Caitlyn. If she can hit me. I have to actually wait for her to get to lane. We'll have to wait a little bit here. Give me a moment, gentlemen. we'll have to, we can just fast forward this, actually. So now she should start hitting me. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to take a lot of damage here. So, as you can see, Pyke has a gray health mechanic, right? When he loses HP, he gains some gray health. Now, what you want to do to utilize your Second Wind and D-Shield, man, I'm getting messed up, is you want to stay in the vision of the enemy, right? You only heal your gray health when you leave vision, okay? And so what you'll notice is that you can hold on to this gray health, and you can get as low as you possibly can to utilize the missing HP regen from Second Wind and D-Shield. So already I've gained 70 health from Second Wind, and even more from D-Shield, right? And this whole time I've been holding on to the gray health, and I'm just letting it stack up. But your goal as a Pyke mid player, or just a Pyke player in general, is to hold on to this gray health as long as you possibly can. And you want to use this to get farm, right? So while you're regenning this whole time, you're hopefully getting the CS, right? The entire idea of this is to take as much poke, or to be able to CS as well as you can, and taking whatever poke that the enemy gives you. And so already my Second Wind is at 127. D-Shield's been healing just as much, if not more. And so that's a common concept, but not a lot of Pyke players know it. And this will completely change your lane phases, is when you start to hold on to this gray health. Okay? And so what you can do, since you're using Second Wind D-Shield, is hold on to potion. If you guys watch my VODs when I play, I usually hold on to this potion for as long as I possibly can, right? The only time I'll really pop my potion is when a fight starts, when a 2v2 starts in the mid lane, right? But your goal is to get through lane phase without actually using a potion. Because the potion you do not want to use when you're 1v1. You only want to pop this potion when a fight comes out. And so I just hit level 3, right? So say that now I'm playing mid lane, even though we're balling. Let's pretend I'm mid lane. Now my jungler wants to gank. So what I'll do is I will pop my potion now and then W. And I'll use this time to regen all my missing HP, and then we can engage the gank, right? And since I have this potion, since I saved the potion for the entire lane phase, it's much harder for the enemy to kill me. So that is a small tip, but will net you so much bonus HP. I mean, we're 3 minutes in, this Kalen's been hitting me, I'm at 270 on the Second Wind. So you'll get so much value out of it. Your goal is to get as low as possible without dying, right? And then that will come through just game time and game knowledge, matchup knowledge. You'll want to practice playing at low HP. That goes for lane phase, and that goes for team fights as well. It's just being comfortable on low HP. It's a very important tool on Pyke. And so let's do a little ability overview for those who are completely new to Pyke. So we'll start from the Q. I kind of already talked about the passive. We'll start with Q. So Pyke's Q is either a stab or a hook, and it costs pretty low mana early game, so you can use this a lot early game. It only costs 55 early on. So for Pyke's hook, you can move during it, right? The biggest strength of Pyke's hook is being able to move during the hook. And that's something that you'll have to utilize so that you can start landing hooks, okay? So a common situation that will happen is you run up to someone and you start charging your hook and they start dodging back and forth. And so pretty much what you're trying to create is a straight line between you and the target that you're trying to hook, okay? The straight line isn't going to guarantee you landing a hook, but it makes it a lot easier. You want to have like a clear line of sight so that you can try to throw the hook at the enemy where they're going to move. Now, I get asked a lot, Dave, how do I land these hooks? How are you so good at landing these hooks? And the answer is just through game experience. I've played thousands and thousands of games. I've just learned through muscle memory and just game time that there's certain dodge patterns that players do, okay? So let's pretend that this target dummy is a champion. Let me move these. So the most common dodges are going to be down or up, right? And that's what you're going to try and predict. So let's pretend that this dummy right here is going to be the down dodge, and this is going to be the up dodge, okay? So when you're charging your hook, you're pretty much trying to predict if they go down or up. In lower elos, even in higher elos, sometimes they won't dodge at all, you know? And that's just kind of the mind game when it comes to hook. If they're going to dodge or if they're going to not dodge at all. And so what you can do, though, is that you can aim your hook in between the no dodge and the up dodge, or the down dodge, right? And so an example of that would be to throw it like right around here, right? And so what you can do is you can kind of cover the option of them both dodging and not dodging, right? So I can actually cover 2 out of 3 dodges here. And you do that by aiming kind of in the middle of the up dodge and the no dodge. So right here. Obviously the dummies are pretty close, but that's kind of the idea when it comes to hooks, is you want to throw it in a way where you can cover them running in a straight line or also cover them dodging at a certain angle. Now, obviously, if they go down and you're aiming like this, if they dodge down, then it's gonna miss, right? But the entire idea is to try and cover as many options as possible. So let's say that I think this dummy is going to dodge to the right. I'll throw it slightly to the right. And so even if the champion doesn't dodge, this hook will still land on the dummy, right? Or on the champion. That is kind of the idea of landing hooks. It's much more complicated than that because obviously they're moving in so many different directions. But your goal is to set up that situation. And you do that by closing distance, and you do that by like trying to maintain a straight line between you and your target. But obviously there's so many situations where you won't be able to do that. I think a big example is like right here. This is a hook that I actually land a lot. So say like you're roaming from mid lane, you E over this wall, and enemy AD carry is running along this wall. What you can do is pretty much this is going to be a 50-50. But how I land this hook 99% of the time, even challenger players will get hit, is I will just throw down. Most of the time, players will dodge down in this position. This Caitlyn bot is beating me up. Okay. Well, that was a slight hiccup. The Caitlyn is very strong. But yeah, pretty much when players are riding along a wall, they will dodge down a lot of the time. I actually named one of my accounts after that dodge. Is Dodge Down Please. This is this is the name of an account that I used. Is because the down dodge is so common. Now, obviously, every player is different, so you know not every player is going to dodge the same. But moving on, let's talk about the Q ability in general. So Pyke's Q always slows, okay? It is a 90% slow, no matter whether it's the stab or it's the hook, right? They're going to be 90% slowed for 1 second. And you want to use that to your advantage, right? So what that 90% slow will do is allow you to land your E. This is a very standard, basic Pyke combo. This is something that you should always be able to land. Is you see the hook connect and then you E forward, okay? You can also do this with the stab. If you're close range, same combo works if you're close range, right? The 90% slow will allow you to land your E very easily because they just really can't move. Now, a mistake that happens a lot is you miss the hook and you E forward without actually landing the hook, right? But you can actually wait until you see the hook land. You can either hear the audio cue or you could just see that it's about to land, right? There is a lot of forgiveness on this combo. You can wait. You can always wait to see if the hook actually lands and then use the E, right? That is pretty simple. You need to be able to land this combo every time you land hook. Now, a big thing is like if enemy has flash, but we'll get into that later. Flash and Zhonyas, all that stuff, it's something that you have to deal with. But for now, we're just talking about the basics. So, a standard lane phase combo for me, a standard trade, going back to the cheap shot thing, is Q auto, okay? So Q auto, I got about, what, 20 cheap shot damage. That's a very standard trade, and a lot of champions won't be able to out-trade that. It's the Q auto. Just one auto. I mean, there's a lot of different trades that you can do in lane. But the whole idea is to proc your cheap shot whenever you can, right? Q auto. Proc cheap shot. It's about a 4-second cooldown on this ability. But it's very important to be proccing this ability in your lane phase trades. So moving on to the W. Pyke's W is pretty simple. It's just a stealth that gives move speed. And the circle around you is the vision radius of the enemy. The main use I have for this ability is to avoid vision. So, for example, let's just say that the enemy took Scuttle Crab, right? And I want to roam. I want to roam, but there's a Scuttle Crab, right? What I'll do is I will leave lane. I'll have my W. Now, if you guys don't know, Scuttle Crab gives vision of the area around it. So if I'm roaming bot lane, say, I use my W to go over the crab. Obviously, the dummies will give me vision, but you guys get it. The W will make sure that you're not spotted going over this crab, right? And you can do that for wards. Just, you need to have a decent idea of where enemy vision is so that you can use your W to avoid the vision. But the W also can help with a lot of combos. I like to set up plays with W as well. A lot of the times when like a gank is happening, I'll start with W and then try to close the distance with it, right? But pretty simple ability. You just want to use it for move speed and to dodge vision. Now, next ability is Pyke's E. This ability is very, very, very important to be comfortable on, okay? So a big thing is that Pyke's E can go over pretty much every wall in the game. And so what you're going to want to do is to be able to E over any wall of your choosing, okay? Very important. His E has enough distance to pretty much cover any wall. And you'll want to get comfortable at being able to really choose the spots where you can E over walls. But you can do it almost over any wall. I think this one is probably... Oh, even that one works. Wow. Even I'm surprised by it. Look how long that E is. Obviously, going all the way through here is too hard. But every wall in the game, there is an angle that you can find for your E. So you'll want to go into practice tool. I promise you, practice tool is very important to be able to do this. You want to be as comfortable as you possibly can, E-ing through every wall in this game. You should go like over the entire map. Just go walk around all of the entire map. This is a very standard E that I use. I use this E every single game, is this wall right here. Because usually I'll be like diving top lane or using blast cone, right? But if there's no blast cone, this is a very standard E that I use. Now, a question I get asked a lot is like, Dave, how do you land your E's just by E-ing on top of them? And it's kind of hard for me to explain just because I've learned it through playing so many games. But the idea of landing Pyke's E is to be directly behind them. You want to kind of E just straight through them is the goal, okay? And the sweet spot in the position you want to be is like right here. Okay, so where you're directly behind them. And once you get this position, if you're opening it with just E, right, just raw E, is to be able to move slightly to the left or slightly to the right to track their movement. And you can do this consistently. It's hard to pull off, but what you can do is just follow where they go, right? You're just clicking back and forth to try and follow where they go. But if you can land the E directly through them, you can land it every time. Obviously, if they have a dash or a flash, it's a bit different. But if they're no mobility and you land the E like this, you should be able to land it every time. Now, obviously, the enemy is going to move to dodge it, but eventually you should be able to learn to track their movement so you can make sure it always lands. Now, we can kind of get into the... actually, we'll talk about ulti. Next ability is his ult. This is Pyke's most important ability by far to ever exist for the champion. Now, if you guys don't know, killing an opponent with Pyke R is going to grant you 600 gold, right? You're going to get 300 gold for the kill, and then Pyke R is going to supply you with 300 more, okay? And you'll also get even 300 more to a teammate if a teammate assists on a kill, okay? But what's very important about Pyke R is being able to position it at any angle you want. And a question I get asked a lot is, Dave, like, how do you adjust to how Pyke R is like constantly changing? And it's actually not the case at all. So Pyke R is always going to be the same shape, right? It doesn't rotate at all. A lot of new Pyke players think that this ultimate rotates, but what you can think about it is like, think about like having tape on your screen in the form of an X, right? And you can just move it around, right? This shape never changes, it never rotates, right? And you need to be able to recognize that. And what really defines a great Pyke player is their ability to use the R in any situation, right? Being able to use the very tip of the R, or, you know, just any leg of it. Very important to get used to this, okay? So what I end up doing a lot of the time is I'll land R's with like the very tip, right? Or just really any angle. You need to be able to go into practice tool and really practice just landing every single angle of the Pyke R you can. And just remember that it doesn't change, right? It never changes. It's always going to be the same shape no matter what position you are on the map. If I'm ganking bot lane, right, it's the same shape. Like, you just have to get used to it. And it's just, sheerly through games played and practice is how you're going to get better at it. So let's get into the combo talk. I have a nice little script here I'm looking at. So we talked a little bit about the Q into E. The Q into E is a pretty standard combo. So this one, you can use it with hook or stab. Both are good. Now, another way to land your E is going to be EW. Now, what W gives you is move speed, right? So the W makes it a lot easier to land your E. You can get the move speed to collapse on him. And this is something I use a lot to set up ganks. If I'm not opening with W, I'll open with EW. So maybe we could like land it on this Caitlyn. This Caitlyn's very high level, so hopefully we don't get one shot. Okay, never mind. So yeah, EW very, very standard. Really, really nice for landing your E. Another combo I'd say is let me pull it up real quick. So we talked about, okay, so another really, really good combo, and I use a lot for kills, is EQ. So kind of going back to the E idea where you're going straight through them, what you can do to pretty much guarantee that this E is going to land is Q backwards. Now, if you guys remember, it slows by 90%, right? So if you're able to land this E straight through them and Q backwards, then it's pretty much a guaranteed stun. And this is a combo I use a lot to get kills. Is they don't really expect you to open with E like this. Like at this range. Now that's a bit more advanced. The Q forward you can do as well. This is also something I use a lot. This is a bit more advanced version. So you can also E like directly on top of them and then Q and then walk behind. That one's pretty difficult to do. The much more consistent one is E through them, Q back. Okay. This one's very nice, very standard. But we can talk a bit more about the EQ forward. So if you guys don't know, Pyke's Q stab actually has a hitbox behind him. So even though I'm like pretty much in front of this dummy, my Q is still landing. And that's because his hitbox on the Q is slightly behind. And so you can use this on the EQ combo. Is to where if your E doesn't go quite far enough to Q backwards, you'll want to Q forward and use the hitbox behind you. And what's important if you land that is to keep walking. You want to keep walking afterwards so you can connect the stun. You have to make sure you keep walking forward. Because landing it doesn't really matter if you don't connect the stun after. That one's probably not... Oh, it did work. Nice. And then a combination of all three spells would be EQW. So if you don't have quite enough distance to land the stun by walking, you can use W to connect it all the way. That one probably doesn't work, yeah. No boots on me right now, so it's kind of hard. But yeah. EQ, very nice setup. This will just take a lot of practice. A lot of practice. There's so many different ways to do it, and it's going to be just dependent on the situation, you know? So, next let's talk about using Flash. Flash is both Pyke's like best friend and his worst enemy, right? Pyke is able to use Flash to connect so much stuff, but Flash also breaks down Pyke's entire kit. Actually took my inhib. So a standard use of Flash is the E Flash. Yeah, let's go River. There's too many minions here. E Flash is very, very standard. What you want to know about Pyke's E is that the Phantom has a set time to return to you. And what Flash does is it takes a bit longer to connect to you. So you can really increase the distance of your E. More advanced use of this would be EW Flash, right? But yeah, this is a great setup for ganks, for kills as well. Like a standard use of this would be E Flash and then walk behind them, throw them back with hook, right? That's more used on support. This is a very standard support Pyke play. It looks like Caitlyn might be ending the game soon. I did not think this through. Guys, we have to dispose of this Caitlyn bot really quick. But we can actually talk about some Duskblade combos as well. So, Pyke's combo game kind of levels up once you get Duskblade. I'm going to show you guys a standard kill combo that I use in a lot of my games, okay? So what I do is when I see a squishy 80 carry and I want to kill them and I have Duskblade, I'll W in, land the E directly through them, auto attack with Duskblade, and then combo. So kind of the same idea as using EQ to connect your stun with the slow. The Duskblade does the same thing. If you guys look at it, Duskblade actually slows for 99% for 0.25 seconds. And so what I do to connect the stun is I E through them the same way that I use in lane, and then I auto attack. This is very, very important. I'm telling you, this will get you so many kills being able to do this. So the standard opening would be W in, trying to find the angle, right? You use your W to get that E angle. You go straight through them and then auto attack for the slow. And the stun is pretty much guaranteed to land. Unless, you know, they have flash. If they have flash, then it's a bit of a different story. But this is a combo I use. I've gotten thousands on thousands on thousands of kills. This combo has been in the game since Duskblade's like existed, since Pyke's existed. This is something you'll want to get used to. And then you just want a full combo right after. Another use of flash, what you can do with the E Duskblade is like do this where you E forward auto. If you don't quite have the distance, you can flash right afterwards. Like that. But Duskblade is gonna be your best friend. I really don't use Prowlers when it comes to playing Pyke. Man, my minions are getting destroyed. Let me toggle the minions really quick. Okay. There's so many uses of Duskblade, but this is going to be your bread and butter. If there's any bread and butter combo, it's the E auto. Okay, and you'll want to be able to land this every time you can, because this is how you farm kills on Pyke, is the E auto with Duskblade. So let's go back into the flash talk. We talked about E flash. There's also Q flash. Q flash is really fast. This is going to be Pyke's fastest option in his entire kit. This combo right here, Q flash auto, very hard to react to. It's almost impossible to react to Q flash. It's just too fast, okay? And I get a lot of kills by doing it. What I'll do is Q flash ignite auto. Oops. So Q flash auto ignite. And that does crazy damage. They cannot react. A lot of the time, actually, they will flash right after, but it's too late. They'll flash right now. And it's just too late. The ignite finishes them off, right? Another use of the Q flash is comboing it with your E. So, kind of going back to the original talk we had about the E, is you can do this. Right, so this is EQ flash. Now, what's important to know about Q flash is it's going to cast it where your flash goes off, right? So if I flash right here, the Q is going to cast from this spot, this exact spot where I flash. So this gives you a much longer range on your Q stab. So like this would be an example. Very, very nice to connect just any ability really. So very advanced use of EQ would be EQ flash, where you use the hitbox behind you, kind of like that. That wasn't the best. But there's a nice little sweet spot like this. Ooh, not quite. Where you flash, where you do the Q flash and you use the hitbox behind you. Kind of like that, yeah. And what that will do is land your Q and your E will land right after pretty much at the same time. Now that's pretty advanced and hard to do. So what I would say is you should do E forward, land the Q, then flash. That is much, much easier to execute. You can do the EQ flash later when you're more comfortable. But this is a very if you guys watch my stream, a level 2 kill usually is how I do it right here. Is E forward, Q, flash behind them, auto ignite. Very, very nice combo. You can kind of advance it as you get better and more comfortable on the champion. But, you know, for now, if you're not too comfortable, just EQ flash. It's very nice. They're slowed, so you can flash after them. So, let's get back into the R talk. A big thing about Pyke's R is being able to combo it with his hook. So, Pyke's hook will always pull them the same distance, right? No matter where they are, Pyke's hook always pulls them back the same distance, right? And it's going to be about half the hook length. And what you need to do is be able to be very comfortable with this distance that it pulls. Because what you can do is you can hook into R. Now, just so you guys know, they can flash out of this, okay? If the enemy has flash and you do this combo, they can still flash at the last second. But this is a very easy way to land your hook, because you land the hook, they're 90% slowed, so you have a full second to land this R. But if you have your mouse positioned to where they're going to end up, it makes it so much easier. You want to be able to know exactly where they're going to be so that you can think about your next move. And that's a big thing when it comes to playing Pyke, is to have all of the basics just down in practice, you know, so you can just think about the next move in your team fights instead of having to think about like where they're going to end up, like how is this going to play out. You just want to be very comfortable. So hook into R, very, very nice combo. You can do hook E into R. The R placement as well is very important. So what I would challenge you guys to do is be able to use the leg of Pyke R off the hook. Kind of like this. So I use the top left leg there. This is more advanced. This is when you get comfortable with using the very center. I'm not even perfect with it, right? I'm not super perfect with this, but it's just because I've just practiced, right? But it's not like I'm getting them dead on straight in the center. But I just know where they're going to end up, so you want to get to that point, right? The next level would be using the leg. Kind of like this. This is when you're super comfortable with ulting off hook, right? But also very important is just being able to use the leg of Pyke R in any direction you can. So like an example of a clip that I had a long time ago is, let me fix this a little bit. So I was in this position, throwing a hook, and I hooked the enemy towards me, and they were in execute range, right? Instead of ulting directly on top of me to connect the R, what I did is actually use my R like this. And so the reason you go over the wall here is that Pyke's R is always going to teleport you to the center, okay? Very important to know. When you Pyke ult, you will always end up in the center of the ulti, no matter where you go. See, I ulti like this, I'll be standing in the center. Right here, I'm in the center. So you can use this to your advantage to where you can go over walls with Pyke R. And you can choose whether you go over or not. So maybe I didn't want to go over the wall, I just ulti like this. But if I do want to go over the wall, ulti like this. So this is something you want to be very comfortable doing. It's not going to be useful in every single game, but it's very nice to be able to jump over walls with Pyke and have the option of either going over a wall or not. It just kind of opens up your plethora of options. And that will just come through practice. So something you'll want to practice is doing a hook into R where you go over the wall. Kind of like that. Didn't quite do that one super perfect, but you know, you get the idea. You want to mess up just to practice it. You want to fail just so that you can eventually succeed. So just practice that a lot. Just being super comfortable with hook into R. Even slowing it down. You know, like you could slow it down to where you're landing the hook and then aiming the ulti after, right? And that's, I would still count that as practice, you know? So let's move on into, let's talk about build. So the build for Pyke is pretty standard, the first two items. Pretty much the entire idea is to make it to this build. Duskblade, Ghostblade. This is Pyke's like bread and butter, the build. This has been the build for so long. Obviously it's had some changes, but Duskblade, Ghostblade is by far Pyke's best combo of items. And just, you know, it snowballs the hardest as well. So my boots of choice are almost always Ionian, okay? And the reason for this is the haste, obviously. It's nice boost speed. The haste is really nice, and the summoner spell haste is really good too. It's just a lot of CDR on a lot of your stuff. Now, what I do build is Merc Treads in some games. Say they have a Leona. I think Leona, like Fiddlesticks as well, is a really good example. Leona and Fiddle, you can build Merc Treads against, but if I'm honest with you guys, I build CDR boots in 95% of my games. The other 5% is Merc Treads, and I almost never buy Ninja Tabbies. Now, the reason for not buying Ninja Tabbies is because I go Death Stance third. And I value this armor to be enough, okay? And the reason for that is because Pyke cannot gain HP. A big reason that tanks can stack up to, you know, 400, 500 armor is because they can build HP, right? So you see a Rammus with like 3.5k HP and like 400 armor. And the reason that 400 armor is useful is because there's so much HP that you have to go through. But the difference with Pyke is that you're not gaining any HP. So stacking armor is actually like pretty diminishing. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it's just not worth it. I deem like 130 armor, 130 to 140 is kind of like the maximum of what you want to build on Pyke. And what you get and what that build would look like is this. It would look like that. I thought I was streaming for a second there. So 170, obviously it's a little bit overkill, but you don't care about that too much just because GA and Death Stance, you don't build them for the armor, you build them for the passives and the utility, right? So for a standard Pyke build, I would say these items are like the go-tos every single game. You're going to be building GA in a lot of your games, and the reason for GA is because Pyke is so squishy and you want to end the games as fast as possible. So building GA, I think fourth is your go-to after the Death Stance. Your first three items in most of your games is going to be Duskblade, Ghostblade, Death Stance. And the reason for Death Stance is it actually makes you a bit tankier. You get damage reduction up to 30%, right? Instead of you know, having to stack armor, which doesn't go too well with stacking HP. You actually just get flat damage reduction, which allows you to survive in fights. Also, this heal is like absurdly broken. Crazy broken item. You should be building this in almost all your games' third item. Now, what will change your build path is when you have bounty. Okay, so say you have a 500 gold bounty, and you have this build. You have Duskblade, Ghostblade, CDR boots, and you're just sitting on so much money. Now, third item, GA, fantastic. If you have a 1k bounty, if you have a fat bounty, third item GA is great. What I usually do if I have a big bounty with this build is I'll go Stopwatch and Call Fields. And what this allows me to do is either finish the GA if I deem necessary, or I can build into Death Stance, right? This kind of gives you leeway on which item you want to go third. So if I were to use the Stopwatch in a fight, if I were to use the Stopwatch, then that is a time where I would finish the GA third. If I were to not use the Stopwatch, I would finish the Death Stance third. And the reason for that is because I still have the Stopwatch, right? And the Stopwatch kind of acts as a GA by itself. But, you know, every game is going to be different. Sometimes you're going to be building Maw third. I think Maw third is a great idea as well. If you're against if you're against 3+ AP champions, then Maw third also great. The Maw third build would probably be GA fourth into Death Stance last. But you can kind of do the same thing with GA Death Stance, where you go Stopwatch and then finish the Death Stance if you haven't used the Stopwatch yet. So that's kind of it for the builds. The things that's never going to change is these 3 items right here. Duskblade first. You're going to build CDR boots usually after Serrated Dirk. Okay. So my goal as Pyke mid is to make it to this item on first base. First or second base. And after I make it to this item, I will go CDR boots. Now this kind of changes. Obviously, if you have enough to finish Duskblade, always prioritize Duskblade. This is like the biggest power spike you'll get the entire game. Going from Serrated Dirk to Duskblade is like game winning a lot of the time if you get it early enough. But a lot of the time, my build will look like this early game. And I'll also buy Sweeper. So when you get boots is when you should always go Sweeper. Okay, very important. Because when you get boots is when you're going to start roaming. Okay, this build I have in a lot of my games. I make sure to go the Serrated first though. Not even boots. Very rare for me to build tier 1 boots before Serrated. Your goal for the early game is to make it to this. Okay, and this allows you to be strong in fights, have mobility to roam, and have some regen as well. But usually you're relying on your... I guess I forgot the D-Shield as well. Usually I have D-Shield with this build. So having D-Shield and refillable pot with second wind, this will get you through a lot of matchups in the early game. Okay, well I guess this wouldn't be super early game. This would be like 10 minutes into the game. But you're relying on D-Shield second wind to make it through the early game, right? So, back into the combo talk. Sorry, we're a little bit all over the place here, but I have a lot of stuff I want to talk about. Let's do a little bit more like Duskblade combos. So, another really standard combo that I do is Hook Auto. Okay. Now, Hook Auto doesn't work at every range. Now, an example of Hook Auto is Point Blank. So what you can do after you land Hook is buffer auto to where you're autoing as soon as they are flying over you. And they cannot flash out of this, okay? This is not flashable. Q auto is guaranteed. If you land the hook, point blank, Q auto guaranteed. Now, if you're more at a distance, like this kind of distance, what you can do is wait for them to get to you, auto attack, okay? This is basic, and you're going to build more on this later. So be able to land your auto as soon as they get to you, right? And if they're point blank, they're on you instantly, so you can auto as soon as the hook goes off, or if they're a little bit further away. You just want to... What I do is I spam. I just spam my A-click until they get to me, and then I can combo afterwards. So to level up this combo, you want to use your E right after the auto. Now, this is going to be an example without Hail Blades. A bit harder without Hail Blades up. Hook, auto, E. Now, this combo is not the most forgiving. It's a lot easier with Duskblade. So here's an example with Duskblade. So this is kind of the idea of E-auto with your Duskblade auto, right? This is the same concept, but instead we're using the hook to set it up. And we're actually doing the auto first. And you can do this a lot too. Like say someone is face checking you in this bush, you can actually do auto E. Like that. You can do the E first, or you can do the auto first, and both work pretty well. It's just the auto first is way less forgiving, because the Duskblade slow doesn't last for that long. But a lot of the time, if you have the right distance, this Q auto E will work every time. Unless they have flash Zhonyas, right? But we'll talk more about that later. And later on in the game, this combo will actually one-shot. If it's a squishy champion, this combo will set up for your ulti. So I also get a lot of my kills doing that. You'll want to practice this for sure. This is really important to be able to do. One thing to note is that it's way easier with Duskblade, or with Halo Blades. But you'll want to practice both versions. I mean, even I mess it up without Hail. But Halo Blades makes this way faster, and it makes the E way more likely to connect. Okay. So that's something you'll want to practice as well. I think what's really important as a player is just being able to practice every single day on your weaknesses and turn your weaknesses into strengths. Okay, so what should we talk about next? I'll pause it there. So let's talk a little bit more about early game. So there's going to be some goals for your early game matchups that you kind of want to consider. And I'm going to type these down in the chat. So a lot of the time, people will assume that Pyke doesn't need farm whatsoever. Okay, this is kind of a false statement, kind of a misconception. Your first 10 minutes of the game is when you're wanting to get the most CS possible as Pyke. Okay, now later on, you won't be farming very much, but a lot of the time, if you watch my VODs, I'll actually have about 8 CS a minute. Okay, and so a really good goal is to have 80 CS at 10 minutes. Okay, that is your first goal as Pyke, and that, like, farm just kind of guarantees the fact that you're gonna get items. Okay, now the farm obviously you can't do during mid game. Pyke's mid game is very different than a normal champion, but his lane phase you want to farm as much as you can, and you want to be able to land every CS. Okay, losing CS during lane phase is inexcusable. You cannot lose CS in the early game. Now, obviously, preferring kills over CS is more important on Pyke. Okay. The most important thing to get on Pyke is kills. But the most consistent way to get your items early game is through farming, okay? And a lot of the time, I'll have 80 to 90 CS at 10, okay? And it's like that for a lot of champions in the game. But the difference with Pyke in the mid game is that he can't farm anymore. He can't go side lane, okay? A lot of the time in mid game, like mid lane champs will go side lane to farm, clear waves, and then look to roam. But Pyke cannot wave clear. This is like his biggest weakness is no wave clear, right? But you don't need wave clear for the early game. In early game, a lot of your farming is just gonna be with auto attacks. Okay, so that's #1 most important thing on Pyke for your first 10 minutes is to farm. But solo kills are also great. Okay, another big thing to do is to try and blow the enemy flash. Okay, now if you guys are new to the game, flash is a 5-minute timer, and the most important thing to keep track of for Pyke. Because when the enemy has no flash, they are much easier to kill, and they really have no way to get out of your combos. Right? Unless they have mobility, of course. Obviously, a lot of champs have mobility. But you want to always, always, always track the enemy flash timers, okay? Oops. Oh, man. 1 second. A little bit of a hiccup. So, what I do when I'm tryharding, I don't do this every game. I'm pretty good at keeping a mental timer. But whenever someone blows flash, especially your enemy lane opponent, you want to time it. So the first thing you'll do is ping the flash, okay? And make sure you have game timers in your chat. Game timers are somewhere in interface, I believe. You want to make sure you have the timers on so that you can see what time you ping the flash. Timestamps is right here. In chat, timestamps show that, okay? So that you can see when you ping this flash. And so all you have to do is look at that timer, 5:32. So at 10:32, Caitlyn flash will be up, right? So I'll just say mid flash. Let's pretend Caitlyn's the mid laner. And so there's some keybinds that you can use. I do this a lot. A lot of high elo players do this as well. Okay, so you type out the flash timer, and you hit Control, and you hit A. Okay, Control A will select all, so that you can Control C. And what Control C does is copy. Okay, so now the flash timer is copied. Now all I have to do is hit Control V, and I can spam this flash timer. Okay, and this is something that's so important, is being able to track flash timers, because what that allows you to do is just ulti someone, right? If you know for a fact they have no flash, you can just ulti them, right? And they can't flash out of it. Now, obviously, if they have Zhonyas or dashes, it's a bit of a different story. But the goal on Pyke is to get the enemy's flashes, okay? So that you can later on punish the fact that they have no flash. Okay, so just going over that again. Type out flash timer, Control A, Control C, and then you can Control V whenever you want it. If you forget the flash timer, just Control V and you can see it. This is a very important aspect of playing Pyke, is keeping track of all 5 flash timers, okay? Now, in higher elos, your teammates will tell you when they have no flash. So, what I'll usually do is when I'm roaming top is I'll type top sums, okay? And like, even if you mistype it, it's fine. And hopefully they'll ping the timers, or they'll say that they have it. But that's a good habit to get into, okay? Is to ask for the summoners if you're making a roam. Like during the roam too. Like say I'm roaming balling right now, I type bot sums. I'll just type that and my teammates will tell me. Now in lower elos they might not, but it's worth a shot, you know, just typing bot sums. Always worth a shot. But in the early game you want to burn the flash as early as you can. And if you guys watch my games, I'll get the enemy flash at like level 2, okay? And the way I'll do that is usually E-start. Now, it's pretty hard to really explain to you guys when you should E-start, when you should Q-start. But a good rule of thumb is to E-start versus melees, and then Q-start versus ranged. Now, the thing is, you can do Q-start versus a melee, and you can do E-start versus ranged. And it's really all dependent on how the enemy plays, okay? Now, what I would say you should do is that you should not level an ability until after the first couple minions, okay? And you want to see how the enemy plays, okay? When you should E-start versus a ranged champion is if they walk into this E range, okay? If they're walking too close as a ranged, right? Or even as a melee. If they walk too close, that's when you can open with E. And level 1 landing this E is so much damage. It procs your cheap shot if you start autoing. You can land pretty much all 3 autos afterwards. You can sometimes 2. Depends on the champion you're playing against. Sometimes you only want to auto twice. Okay. But it's not really like concrete, okay? Now E is good versus melees, Q is great versus ranged, but it's all dependent on how the enemy plays and how well they know how to play against Pyke, okay? So it's really not the same. Sometimes I'll do Q start versus a melee champ, and sometimes I'll do E start, right? Even if it's the same champion, like versus Talon or Zed. It really just depends on how the enemy is playing, and you want to just spam games and start to learn to adapt to how the enemy plays lane phase, okay? But even if you don't kill the enemy in the early game, I consider getting the enemy's flash a solo kill, okay? I think flashes are worth the same as kills. And why I think that is because burning someone's flash will net you a kill later on in the game. So even if you don't get a kill in your lane phase, burning their flash is already a win. You're already winning if you burn their flash, because it's 5-minute timer, right? So 1440 would be the flash timer they use it right now. And then we do the Control C, Control V. Okay, so I cannot stress this enough. Always keeping track of flash timers. It's too important on this champion. Because when you know someone has no flash is when you're able to just straight up ulti them if they're in range, right? But when you see a red target, okay, you need to condition yourself. Man, this guy's tanky. When you see a red target, you need to think to yourself, does this player have flash? Okay? I know, like, a lot of Pyke players, when they see this, they will instantly R, okay? Now, when you're approaching an enemy with a red health bar, there should be so many things going through your brain. Do they have Gale Force? Do they have Flash? Do they have Zhonyas? And it's kind of like a checklist almost, right? It's kind of like a checklist that you go through. And if all the requirements are met and you see this red opponent, then you can ulti. But if you're not sure about the flash timer, if no one's pinged it, I usually won't ulti. And, you know, there's a lot of things that go into it. Like, a player that has flash will play differently than a player that doesn't have flash. But that's kind of something that you'll learn. It really, that is something that comes through game knowledge. Like, most of the time when a player has no flash, they'll run at the side of Pyke, right? But sometimes when someone has flash and they're in range, they'll actually stay close to you so that you ulti them and then they can just flash it. And, you know, that can win fights. But I'm telling you guys, you need to condition yourself to not always ulti if they're red. You need to go through the checklist, okay? The checklist would be, do they have flash? Do they have any mobility? And do they have Zhonyas? Or like this checklist, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, this checklist can go up to like 10 things. A zillion on the enemy team. Does zillion have R? Do they have heal? Heal can also affect the decision to use your ulti. That's the biggest struggle when it comes to playing Pyke, is there's just so many things that can stop your ulti. But the best move you can make is to be aware of all of these options. So when you take Ignite, the Ignite can counter the heal, but there's really no counter to Flash. The only counter to Flash is like CCing them so that they can't Flash. But we'll put Caitlyn in range again. We'll say this one more time. Checklist. You see red health bar, you go through your checklist mentally. And usually I'm pretty fast at this. Honestly, what I do a lot of the time is if my enemy laner is red, I will control V. I'll control V. And a lot of the time, I'll have multiple flash timers. So let's just do some fake timers. Mid, 11:30 Jung. So when I see a red health bar, I'll actually open my chat, hit Control V, check the timer, and then look to ulti. If I confirm that they have no flash. But one of the reasons, like, I'm so good at playing this champion is because I always go through that checklist every time I see a red health bar. And that's why, like, a lot of the time people will be like, Dave, why aren't you ulting? There's a red target on the screen. Why aren't you ulting? It's because the requirements have not been met, okay? You have to go through that checklist. Every time, I promise you. You have to get in the habit of using that checklist mentally. And, you know, typing out flash timers in chat and having them saved is a massive plus. And it can make your job a lot easier going through that checklist. Okay. So, I guess we would call that patience. People like to say that I'm really patient with my play. But it's hardly even patience. It's just the requirements haven't been met yet. And that's why I won't be ulting. And once the requirements are met, that's when I instantly turn on, like, the engage mode. Okay. So, we talked about the early game goals. I have them on a little thing right here. Okay. So, early game goals are Serrated Dirk first base, Serrated Dirk with CDR boots. This is your early game goal. With 80 to 90 CS at 10. Serrated first base. 80 to 90 CS at 10. Okay. And also kills and flashes. Kills and flashes. But if I'm honest with you guys, the CS should be valued more than kills in the early game. Kills should only be prioritized if they're just like omega free, if they're very, very free, okay? And again, once you buy these boots, you should always go sweeper. The moment you buy CDR boots, you should go sweeper every time, because that's when the roaming starts. And a small little tool is that you can use sweeper during your W. It won't cancel you. So this is a way that you can kind of like start roaming the map, is pop your sweeper when you're in your W. It won't cancel your W at all. You can see if there's any vision, like you're roaming on this Caitlyn. Don't know if there's any vision, just sweeping in, and then we engage. So this is just, I'm just gonna do some like standard combos. We'll do like the EQ again. Man, this Caitlyn is going crazy. Messed up the EQ, we'll try it one more time. Oh man, my game is bugging out. Okay, whatever. Nice. So that was an example of heal. A good way to counter the heal is to use your ignite when you engage. And a small little tip that people don't know is that you can actually ignite during your R, okay? And you can actually use flash as well. Now, flash during R is pretty useless. This really doesn't do much. But there are situations where this is useful, but I think you guys should just not even think about this. This is just like so minuscule, and there's, you know, 1 in 1,000 situations where R flash like this is useful. But what's very useful is R ignite. So if you saw it, my ignite did 70 damage right before the ulti landed. We'll do it again. Okay, and I use this so many times. If I see the enemy use heal, right, and they're barely outside of execute range, I think we could probably use it on Caitlyn. We can actually show it on Caitlyn if I can find her. Caitlyn, where are you? But I'm telling you guys, you have to be able to react with the ignite. if you notice that they barely heal outside of your ulti range using the ignite, this saves so many fights for me. So many fights get saved by that tiny little difference, that 70 damage difference. But this can be game winning, I'm telling you. So being able to do this is so important. Just that 70 damage ignite tick. So we'll do an example right here. I'll have to use ignite just to get her in range. Okay, so here's an example of when R ignite would be useful. I'm gonna wait for her to regen actually. When they're barely out of range, right? We're just gonna keep walking with her until she gets out of range. Okay. Well, this is a bit awkward. Okay, well, whatever. You guys get the point. So, if they're barely out of range, I just R ignite. The one thing to note is that the ignite range is not too big. So if you're max range ulting like this, you actually can't use the ignite. Okay. So R ignite really only useful when you're close range with them. Like, even there, I couldn't actually ignite first. You have to be quite close for this, but very important to be able to do it. Okay. So, let's move on to the mid-game. I think mid-game Pyke is a lot of players' weaknesses. Now, mid-game is when your farming pretty much goes to nothing, okay? You are not going side lane as Pyke. What you're doing in the mid-game is you're using your sweeper. Okay, let's say you have Duskblade, Ghostblade mid-game, right? This is like standard mid-game, like a pink ward too, why not? Make sure you have sweeper when you have this build, okay? Now, what you're kind of doing in the mid-game is you're hovering around mid, and you're usually going to be playing with your jungle and with your support, okay? So let's say, this is kind of an extreme example, but I have Nautilus and Nidalee. Now, what do these champions do? Okay, Nautilus has CC, he's a hook, CC, knockup, and Nidalee is a champion that follows up off that CC. So, in the mid-game, you want to be looking at who your jungle and who your support are, and think to yourself, how well do these champions set up for me? And if it's something like a Nautilus, a Leona, a Thresh, it's perfect. It's perfect. You want to become their best friend, you know, in the mid-game. And if you guys watched me and Alicopter back when we used to play all the time, we were a businessman duo because Alistar is just a perfect champion to set up for Pyke. We would just run around the map and kill everyone, and that was during mid-game. So an example of a player making mid-game is like path through jungle, okay? And I'll enter enemy either top side or bot side. Depends on which side is winning. Usually you want to hug your winning side. So I'll go into jungle and sweep around, okay? You want to clear vision in the mid-game. Very, very important. Very important to clear vision mid-game. Now, maybe they'll ask you, why don't you build Umbral for this? I think Umbral is a great item, but it doesn't really fit into the mid-Pyke build path or playstyle. I think fantastic item, does great for support Pyke, but I just utilize Sweeper for vision control. I think Sweeper is your best bet for vision control. Now we gotta dispose of this Caitlyn really quick. Maybe I can show you guys the R ignite. Yeah, this would be range for R ignite. I think actually no, 2 ticks of ignite. Maybe we can just try it. Oops. Yeah, so we needed 2 ticks there. She actually used heal. Wow. Another important thing, if you ignite someone, is being able to like use your ulti the moment they enter range. Also, just you know, if they use flash, then you should always be looking to ulti if they flash away like that. Ignite just combos really well with your ulti. You need to be able to really read the ignite damage, and the moment you know they're gonna enter execute range off next tick is when you should ulti. Okay. You want to be very comfortable with the damage that Ignite does and the damage that each tick of Ignite does, okay? You want to be very comfortable with each tick of Ignite so that you can ulti off the next tick. Like right there. Right there, I ultied off the 3rd tick. And that's a way that I get a lot of kills even when they don't have flash. It's because people don't expect to be in execute range. And this is a great way to do it. It's because you're ulting the moment Ignite ticks. And sometimes they'll catch people off guard. But continue with the mid-game talk. You just want to be making plays with support in jungle, and you set up these plays through vision control, okay? W into jungle, sweep around, sweep around. You can play for enemy camps. But your #1 goal in the mid-game goal is mid-tower, okay? Now, you might ask, what does mid-tower do, Dave? Well, mid-tower opens up the map entirely for you. It kind of allows you to go through both the bot side jungle and through the top side jungle through like this path, but also like it makes this Caitlyn completely open to ganks. when the mid tier 1 is up, they're allowed to take this wave, but when it's down, you can just set up flank angles like this and punish people for farming. Instead, when you're in the mid game as Pyke, you're not doing any farming. What you're doing is trying to deny all farm you can from the enemy team, right? You want to deny as much farm as you can, because eventually you're going to fall off, right? So you want to close the game out as fast as possible. So getting the mid tier 1 is kind of the best way to open up the map in the mid game. And once you do this is when you can really start to take over enemy jungle, look to punish everyone on waves, okay? And what you'll do with your supporting your jungle is you'll see someone like top lane, bot lane, mid lane, you'll see them farming by themselves, and that should be an instant play that you can make, is punish someone farming, because farming takes a lot of time, and you want to punish this time that it takes. We're gonna have to turn off minion spawn here. That's pretty much it for the mid-game talk, as far as I know. We talked about GA and stuff. You want to always make sure you have GA when you have Fat Bounty, or just GA at really any point in the game. I think another big point is like for dragons, okay? Now, if you know a big fight is going to happen, at say like third dragon is about to spawn, right? Enemy team has 2 dragons, third one's about to spawn. Buying a GA is fantastic just to win a fight. You really want to test your game knowledge and make your item purchases based off the state of the game. And that's why it's kind of hard for me to tell people exactly what to build, is because every game in League of Legends is so dynamic and so different that, you know, it's not always going to be the same. So sometimes I'll go GA third item if I really need to win a dragon fight, right? Because a GA is much more valuable in that one fight than a Death Dance would be, because the GA revives me, right? And this is just something you'll have to learn through game knowledge and practice, is being able to purchase items at the right time for the right fights. So, yeah, that's it for the mid-game talk. Let's get into late game. So, late game, your build is probably most likely going to look like this. Maybe you have a Maw. I think last item, Edge of Night, also good. The items that you should be building outside of these 4 core, is either Maw or Edge of Night. In the current meta, I don't really see any other items that you should build last item on Pyke. Maybe you could build the QSS item, one of these. If you're against like a Malzahar, I think Malzahar is pretty common in low elo. You can build this item, you can build QSS. I'm not a huge fan of building QSS in a Malzahar, but you know, if you're super fed, then yeah, you'll have to build QSS in a Malzahar just so that you can play the game. So kind of towards, I guess this would still apply to mid game, is let's talk about how we use Duskblade for fights. Okay, very important. So if you guys don't know, Duskblade gives you stealth off of kills. Okay, actually don't know where this Caitlyn ended up. Duskblade gives you stealth off of kills, and this is the reason the item is so OP, is the stealth in fights. Okay, so an example, it would be I ulti someone, right, and I go stealth. Now, when you're in this stealth is when you should be thinking about your next move instantly, okay? When you're in this stealth is when you should consider your next best move, okay? So either go on the next target, try to W away, or like flash on someone. There's so many moves that you can make, but this Duskblade stealth window gives you a lot of time. 1.5 seconds, not a whole lot of time, but in League of Legends, it's a lot of time where you can think about what to do next, okay? You should not be choking during this stealth time. This stealth time is what allows you to win fights. And a small note is that this stealth actually gives you a little bit of healing on your passive, okay? Because you go out of vision. You go out of vision, your passive's going to be healing you, your Death Dance is going to be healing you, and if you have Triumph, your Triumph's going to be healing you. But also, like, second wind, doing a little bit of healing if you're in a fight. Okay? And that's what allows me to win so many team fights and just smurf so many fights, is that I use that Duskblade stealth time to really consider what I should do next and what my next best move is. So it's kind of hard to explain like how to team fight, but that is the core of Pyke's team fighting, is Duskblade stealth. And you know, you go stealth, people can't see you. Now, a counter to this Duskblade stealth is something like Kai'Sa W, or just True Vision in general. Okay, so an example of True Vision is Kai'Sa W. Also, TF ulti. There's a lot of abilities that give True Vision in this game, but Kai'Sa W is like a big one that you'll get murdered by a lot. Now, obviously, if you're Kai'Sa W and you go Duskblade spell, you're just going to die, okay? So it's pretty hard to play against those champions, but that's just something you'll have to pay attention to, is what can really reveal you during your Duskblade. Okay, let's talk about a team fight situation, okay? Now, this is something that I get a lot of, like, montage clips off of, okay? This is the ER flash, okay? This is going to be game-winning combo. This is how you're going to win a lot of fights, and you need to be very comfortable at doing it, okay? So, when you ER, right, you teleport to the person you ulted, and your E follows you, okay? Very important. This is just comboing the E flash idea from earlier, but we're just doing it off of the R as well. So, let's say that this is an execute target, and I see another squishy right behind it. So, this is ER flash. And that connects your stun into the next R, right? This is something that is amazing in team fights. This is one of the most important tools for Pyke in a team fight. Another small thing is being able to position your R so that you can go to the next target. So an example of that would be aiming the ulti like right here. I mean, I don't even have to flash for that, right? But, you know, you don't have to go for some crazy ulti positioning. A lot of the time in team fights, I will just use the direct center and then flash right after. But, you know, as you become more of an advanced Pyke player, you can use the edge to, like, flash over crazy walls. Like, say there's a target right there, and I wanna go for the target after this execute. But positioning well will allow me to go for that, right? If I use the center, it's much harder. It's nearly impossible. But if you position your R well enough, you can actually connect to the next target, and that will open up so many windows as being able to use the right position of ulti. And realistically, the only way to get good at this positioning is just practice and game time. Okay? Hopefully you guys can understand that using ulti in the center like this won't allow me to connect to the next target. Sometimes you have to go for the really risky ulti position so that you can win the fight by going for the next target. Okay? But as you're new to Pyke, as you're learning Pyke, it is completely fine to just use the center. You know, landing the ulti is definitely the most important in team fights. You know, if you don't land the ulti, you don't win. So what you can do is just focus on using the center for team fights. But as you get better, hopefully you can learn to really use the full potential of Pyke R, because it's just such an awesome ability, one of my favorite abilities in the game. Just so many uses for it, and as you get better as a Pyke player, the ulti really defines you as a player. I know a lot of low elo players like Pyke just R, lol, Keck W, Omega lol, Pyke only R, but Pyke R is a very high skill ceiling ability, and what makes great Pyke players is being able to use this ulti to its maximum benefit, you know. Being able to position it so that you are in your best position possible. So yeah, that's it for a team fight scenario. I mean, obviously there's so many different ways to do it, but this is a very standard combo that I do is ER flash, and this is how I get triple kills, right? Like, because that flash will get me like another kill or 2 kills, 3 kills even. But yeah. So the last thing we're going to talk about is late game on Pyke. Now late game is awful, complete garbage for Pyke. You never want to make it to this stage of the game where it's about 30 minutes in. But say you did make it to late game, okay? Your #1 priority is to stay grouped, okay? Late game Pyke cannot do anything by himself. He is a chicken nugget in the late game, okay? But he still has his hook, okay? So in late game, what you want to do is still play for vision and play for picks. It's kind of like mid game, but just way harder because enemy team is full build. They have Guardian Angel, they have Zhonyas, they have everything. So playing grouped with your team is the most important thing. You want to look for plays with your team. Never play by yourself in the late game, unless like you're very confident that you can make a play that might be able to win you the game. There's not a whole lot to talk about when it comes to Pyke late game. It's just really being able to move around the maps in a smart way and just know like where the enemy team wants to go, right? So like say the last dragon is about to spawn or Elder Dragon is about to spawn. You want to position yourself with your team in a way that you can make a play but also be supported, right? So say my team is entering Elder from this side of the map. I like to usually eat over this wall. So I'm still kind of grouped, but I'm also kind of split. So as my team walks up, I can either choose to take this flank angle, or I can look for a hook from this, right? And what I do in late game, or just mid game in general, when I want to look for a hook is I W. Okay, you W, and you think about the best way to position for a hook, and then you look for it. And you try to go for it as fast as you can, okay? Now, not to hate on any player, but an example of a bad Pyke engage is one that like a player like I'm a Cutie Pyke would use, and he'll E4 like this and look for a hook. But dude, in late game, if you E4 like this into a team, look for a hook, they're just gonna kill you. Okay, you want to save your E as much as you can. You cannot use your E for an engage unless it's absolutely necessary. You should be using your W to look for hooks. This applies to mid game, this applies to late game, this even applies to early game. Like opening up with W is the best way to do it, and you can use your W to position as best you can, and then look for hooks. Like, you know, you can look to predict the side dodge, just go straight forward, anything. But okay, let's talk about everything that counters Pyke. Okay, I'm gonna buy it in the shop. Okay, obviously there's still flash. Okay, there is Zhonyas. Zhonyas is like the biggest problem with Pyke. Okay, now stopwatch and Zhonyas exist in this game, right? And Zhonyas comes in the form of 2 items. Now, the only way to really counterplay this is to be constantly hitting tab and checking the enemy items, okay? What a lot of the time support players will take the rune that gives you a free stopwatch, and you can check that, see if it's up or not. You can always check if enemy has Zhonyas. Obviously, like if they're red, if the enemy is red and they have Zhonyas, you cannot ulti, okay? That's something off the checklist that you just won't be able to deal with until after it's used. Now, the only counterplay to Zhonyas really is ulting them out of it, okay? Now, this is going to take a lot of practice, but there is a way to ulti someone out of Zhonyas, and it's almost a perfect timing. So, how I do it is, it's pretty hard, but you see how like these yellow orbs kind of collect? When they all collect into the center, right there is when you can ult. So right now, okay? That's when you should be ulting someone when they're using Zhonyas. You see all these orbs collecting, when they all come back into the champion, right now is when you should ulti. And that's a pretty good timing, and that will catch them pretty much as soon as they come out. But this is something you've got to practice. Now, I understand this is nearly impossible to practice because you cannot bring someone into practice tool. Now, what I did back in the day in Season 9 when I started is I actually got my friends to go into a custom game, farm for Zhonyas, and then use Zhonyas so I could practice it. Now, if you have friends that can do that with you, if they're willing to do it, go for it. But, I mean, the best way to practice this is just by playing the game, you know? A lot of people won't be willing to practice this with you. But you need to be able to see. I mean, this is just how I do it. You can also, like, kind of feel out the timing. You can use the audio cue. I don't use the audio cue. I use the visual cue of all these orbs collecting to one place. As soon as they all collect into the champion, right there. So that's kind of my best tip I can give on countering Zhonyas, is just holding ulti until it's down. And then you ulti them off the Zhonyas because they're stuck in place, right? And it's very obvious what's going to happen next, is they're going to pop out of it and they can't move. But, you know, even if you hit this timing, this still exists, where they just flash right out of it. Definitely still exists. This is just something you'll have to get used to. If they have no flash and you see them Zhonyas, then it should be a free kill. But again, like, there's so many counters to this champion. You'll just have to learn to deal with everything and learn to adapt, and, you know, add things to your checklist when you're looking to Pyke R. So that's pretty much going to be it for the Pyke guide. Now, if you guys haven't noticed, one thing I haven't really talked about is matchups. And, you know, it's kind of hard to talk about matchups in one single guide video. So I'm not going to, you know, talk about the Zed, Fizz, LeBlanc, Akali matchup. There's a lot of hard matchups in this game. But to be honest with you guys, the only way to get better at matchups is by playing them and by watching VODs, okay? And what I plan on doing is I'm going to start making more educational content where I can help people at least start to learn matchups. And I'm trying to start to do more VOD review on my YouTube channel. Hopefully it will start be coming out pretty soon. But obviously I can't talk about every matchup in this video. There's so many intricacies to every matchup. Every matchup plays a little bit different. But what I'm starting to do now is I'm going to be uploading coaching VODs. And by coaching, I mean VOD reviewing my own games. And maybe even VOD reviewing some of my viewers. But the number one tip I can give you guys, and this has become kind of a meme in my Twitch stream, is to watch VODs, okay? What do I mean by watching VODs? I mean watching gameplay of a player and studying them to learn, okay? You pull up just random either videos from my stream. You can just search Davemon Pyke on YouTube and find VODs and just study, you know? And study as much as you can and try to pay attention to what they do in the lane phase that really allows them to come out on top. Now, I'll definitely delve more into this topic in future videos. I'll maybe even try to make like a VOD review guide where I kind of explain the entire idea of VOD review. But I'm hoping that this guide helps everyone out a lot. I hope I covered mostly of what people wanted to know. But yeah, I appreciate y'all for watching, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace, peace.